Hello, I'm Tom Murphy.
And I'm Amy Smith. We're joining you live for the 2024 CBC Nova Scotia Leaders Debate.
Well, the cost of living has skyrocketed, housing has become scarce and expensive, and healthcare access is still a problem for many Nova Scotians.
All of this as we grapple with record-breaking population growth. In less than 10 years, we've added more than 135,000 people to the province.
That is the backdrop for tonight's Leaders Debate, as the province's three main party leaders face off for the next 90 minutes. We are joined by Liberal leader Zach Churchill, NDP leader Claudia Chender, and PC leader Tim Houston.
And here's how it will all work. The debate is split into 5 sections, each with a different theme. We'll tackle healthcare, affordability, climate action, raising a family, and our province's growth. Each leader will get 90 seconds on the clock to respond to the lead questions in each category.
We'll be putting some of your questions to the leaders tonight, but we'll begin with statements from each party leader. We had a draw to determine the order, and first up is Progressive Conservative leader Tim Houston. Mr. Houston.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Amy, and good evening, Ms. Chender. Good evening, Mr. Churchill, and good evening, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for caring. It's been the greatest honor of my life to be here to serve as your premier. We live in an incredible province, and I am so proud to be Nova Scotian. Tonight, you may hear a little bit of criticism, maybe a lot of criticism. But I want you to know that your government has made significant investments and they are producing results. We have a lot good happening in this province. Our government hasn't been perfect and there's a lot of work to do, but the province is on a good path. And this campaign is about charting out a path for the future, a path to lower taxes, a path to more and more doctors, and a path to higher wages. We have a lot possible in this province, and I am ready to make it happen. So I want to wish Ms. Chender and Mr. Churchill the very best of luck tonight. I'm looking forward to the discussion. So grab your coffee and settle in.
All right, thank you, Mr. Houston. Now, Liberal leader Zach Churchill.
Thank you very much. Here's the reality when I talk to Nova Scotians. They know that we've gone from being one of the most affordable places to live in our country to one of the most expensive in the last 3 years. We have had a premier that is running on the same broken promises that he ran on last time. And I want to ask the viewers at home, do you think healthcare is fixed? Is your paycheck going further than it used to? I don't even think this election was called for you. I think it was called because Mr. Houston wants more power and less accountability. The good news is that you have a choice to choose a better vision, one that is going to give you $3,000 back in tax cuts for you and your family, one that has a real plan to build 80,000 new homes while we protect renters and invest in deeply affordable housing units, and one that gets back to the fundamentals of our healthcare system, focusing on getting doctors back into family practice and patients attached to family doctors. We've had big challenges over the last number of years. A big part of that has been because Mr. Houston has been driving to double our population at a time when we are already bursting at the seams, when our government services and our housing can't keep up. I ask you to pay attention to the debate tonight and realize that the power in this election is with you to choose what your future looks like. We know that we have a better deal for you, and I certainly ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Churchill. Now NDP leader Claudia Chender.
Good evening, and thank you, Tom and Amy, and thank you to all of you watching at home, because this election is about you. Nova Scotia is an incredible place to live, but again, too many are losing hope that they can stay. For Nova Scotians to build a good life, we need homes that we can actually afford, healthcare we can rely on, and a cost of living that doesn't break the bank. After big promises and big spending from the Conservatives, things feel more out of reach than ever to the people we talk to. Rents are up 70%, and 145,000 Nova Scotians are waiting to be attached to primary care. Ask yourself, is this the best we can do? My commitment to you is this: I will fight every single day to make your lives better. The NDP will protect renters and build homes that people can actually afford. Our doctor clinics will attach you to primary care no matter where you live. And we will lower the cost of essentials by removing the HST from everyday items like groceries, cell phone, and internet bills. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks, Tim and Zach. I want you to know that I'm running for Premier because the people of this province finally deserve a government who puts them first.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chender. Thank you all. The first topic we want to tackle tonight is the cost of living in this province, beginning with housing. Nova Scotians are experiencing a housing crisis we haven't seen the likes of since the Second World War. People doing the building can't keep up. They even struggle to find accommodations for the construction workers to do the work. So how would your government increase the housing stock by the end of your 4-year mandate? And Mr. Houston, the draw determined you are the first to answer.
Thank you for this important question. We're in a housing crisis for sure. We need more housing. I believe the solution to the housing crisis is more housing. So we've put a number of policies in place that are seeing new home starts increase. As a matter of fact, as a result of some of the policies we put in place, like the MOST program, this is the More Opportunities for Skilled Trades. This is one that actually speaks to where do we get the people to build the homes? Under this MOST program, anyone who's working in a skilled trade who's under 30 years old doesn't pay any personal provincial income tax on their first $50,000. And I got to tell you, I've spoke to a lot of young people who tell me what a difference this is making. The program is designed to encourage young people to get into the trades, young skilled tradespeople to stay here, young skilled tradespeople to move to Nova Scotia, move home to Nova Scotia and help us build. So programs like that, and there's a number of them. And I know the plan is working because in 2023, we saw record home starts, more home starts since we'd seen in the early 80s. So look, there's no overnight solution, but we need to see those home starts go up, and we are seeing it in this province. The plan is working, and the plan was developed. It's the first housing plan that this province has seen in 2 decades. And we developed it by listening to Nova Scotians. We actually had input from over 20,000 Nova Scotians. So housing starts are up. We know there's more work to be done, but the plan is working, and we just need to stick to the plan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Houston. Ms. Chender, as leader of the NDP, how would a government that you lead increase the housing stock in this province?
Thanks for the question. You know, when I think about affordable housing and where we are with affordable housing, I think about the couple on Gaston Road, one of the last formerly affordable areas in Dartmouth, who, when I knocked on their door last month, told me that they didn't know where they were going to go because of the $300 rent increase they had just gotten. Now, I was able to tell them that that was illegal, but they were still concerned. The reality is rents have gone up 70% since this government took office. They have not closed the fixed-term lease loophole, and they have not created a path to home ownership. That is what we need, and that's what we'll do. We will immediately implement rent control. This is a policy we understand and have been advocating for years. We will cut the allowable rent increase, we'll close the fixed-term lease loophole, and we'll get people into housing. The rent-to-own starter home program that we announced, we are so excited about. Number one, people can build equity and get into homes. And number two, people can do that without breaking the bank. Tim's plan of 2% mortgages are going to saddle people with more debt at a time when everything is more expensive than ever. The best part is that if we can incentivize the flat pack modular construction that we have available to us in this province, we can build homes more quickly, more cheaply, more efficiently, and in a way that requires fewer of those in-demand trades.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chender. Mr. Churchill, what's your party's plan to address this issue?
Well, the first thing we have to do is deal with the demand side, the amount of people that we have here. We've got a premier that is driving to double our population successfully, the one promise that he's managed to keep, and that is creating scarcity in our housing supply and creating situations that are terrible for seniors, for young families, and for young people who are worried about their ability to afford to build a future here in their own home. If you look at the party platforms, ours goes the furthest to protect renters, to help keep you in your apartment, deal with the fixed-term lease loophole, but also provide a rent bank so when you run out of money at a particular month, you will have government funding there to help you pay your rent. We are also the only party that is committed to building 80,000 new homes, which, according to the housing assessment done by the province, needs to happen, or else we will have a homelessness and a housing crisis that continues to get worse. Ms. Chender's plan will build 500 new prefabs. That's a good start, but that's a week's worth of Mr. Houston's population growth plan. We need 80,000. We need to rely on the private sector primarily to build these, but also invest in the not-for-profit sector to build those deeply affordable housing units like they're doing at Adsum House, like they're doing in Antigonish, and also build co-ops so that there's more housing options that are affordable for the people that need it. This is critical to give not just help to our seniors and our families who are renting or looking for homes to live in. It's important to give young people hope in the future that they want to build here.
Mr. Houston, my question for you, according to Statistics Canada, more than 30% of Nova Scotians are renters. Rents have risen 18% since last year in Halifax. We are consistently among the highest rate of rent inflation in the country of late. There is a 5% rent cap in place at the moment, but fixed-term leases are being used by some landlords to get around the cap and to jack up the rents, as opposed to alluded to here. What will you do about that situation?
Thanks very much. And I go back to the fact that the solution to the housing crisis, and the housing crisis, it shows itself in a number of ways. The fixed-term leases, the lack of availability. The solution to the housing crisis is more housing. We have record housing starts in this province right now, biggest since the 80s, because of policies that we put in place. And those are policies that at each and every opportunity, the opposition voted against. They tried to slow us down. They would complain when we start to build. They would complain that we didn't build, but we just kept moving forward, and we will continue to build homes in this province. The rent cap is certainly there to protect renters. We know that that's necessary while homes get built, but the solution is more supply, and that's why we will continue to move forward to get homes built in this province. And when I looked at the party platforms from my two opponents here tonight, I noticed that the things in their platform are things that we're actually doing and things that they complained about on the floor of the legislature. They could have got behind them on the floor of the legislature. They didn't have to wait for an election and put them in a platform. Record housing starts. We will continue to build homes in this province, and we will overcome any opposition, because we know that houses need to be built, and we are the only party that can make it happen.
Tim, the question is about rents going up. 18% last year, 70% since you took office. What are you doing about rents? Your rent cap is not working.
We're building more homes. The solution to the housing crisis is more homes. The rent cap is there to protect renters, and of course it is protecting them with the 5%. But we know that we need more homes. So we'll continue to work with municipalities, as we've done, to look at Crown land and say, what is the best use case for this Crown land? When it is housing, we make housing. When it is not appropriate for housing, then we don't. But we make the decision, we move forward. It's time. We know that those two parties, when they were in government, they didn't make it happen. But folks, we are making it happen. We will continue to build homes.
I urge voters to look at the platforms. Mr. Houston's is more like a pamphlet. You'll see there is nothing in there for housing. There's nothing in there to protect renters. Our platform goes the furthest to protect renters who are fearful of being evicted, who are fearful of their rent increases going up beyond what they can afford. But the root cause of this, and unfortunately we're the only party willing to talk about this, is that Mr. Houston is driving to double our population at a time when we're already bursting at the seams, when the vacancy rate is near zero in this province. He talks about all the new housing starts that have been happening. Guess what? Housing per capita is in free fall in this province. The amount of housing units per person is dropping. Okay. We have to deal with the demand side. That's how many people that we're bringing into our province when we're clearly bursting at the seams.
Mr. Houston, just a quick rebuttal there. And then
yeah, it's not accurate. And when you look at population growth, I mean, certainly our population has been growing, but it's growing about the same pace as it grew under the Liberal government. So we know that there are challenges of growth, but in this province, we've also seen challenges of decline with schools closing, businesses closing. So there are challenges of growth.
Okay.
But I accept those challenges of growth, and we know that we need to keep pushing forward on building housing stock, and we have the policies in place. The first investments in this province in public housing in almost 30 years. The NDP didn't make it happen. The Liberals didn't make it happen. The PC party made it happen, and
All
we
right,
will
we
continue
need
to
to
make it
keep
happen for
moving
Nova
on this.
Scotians.
According to the Deputy Minister of Housing, more than 7,000 Nova Scotians are awaiting public housing. Governments of all stripes have failed to build enough of it. What's your vision for addressing that need? Ms. Gender.
Thank you. There are 7,000 people on the wait list for public housing, and we talk to them all the time. It's incredibly, incredibly stressful. And even for people who have an emergency application, they are ill, they are fleeing domestic violence, the wait is over a year, and it's totally unacceptable. This government's promises, Tim's assertion that he's building public housing, we're not seeing anything more than maybe in the dozens. We have a plan to make a plan in a long time that will be a plan. That's not public housing. What we need is non-market housing, and that's what we're talking about. When Tim talks about housing supply, he seems to think that these shiny condos are magically going to become affordable in anyone's lifetime, and they won't. What we need is public housing, but we need non-market housing. And we have lots of non-market housing providers in Nova Scotia that can make that happen. We have people like the YMWCA. We have people like Add Some House, who are partnering in some cases with for-profit providers to build housing that stays affordable. It's rent geared to income.
I'd like to hear Mr. Churchill's vision for public housing.
The reality is we're not going to build enough housing to dig us out of this housing crisis. We do need non-market housing. We need affordable housing. We think it's better to invest in the not-for-profits that have a better track record than government at building these properties and making them more affordable and better managed. We also want to invest in co-op housing so that you can own equity in your property. These are great options for people. But these wait lists will keep going up. Our vacancy rate will remain at zero. More people will become homeless if we do not prevent Mr. Human's drive to double our population when we don't have enough houses to accommodate people who are living here now.
Mr. Houston, let's hear from you.
Thank you so much. And I think this is a philosophical difference between certainly the PC party and the NDP for sure, where I believe the solution is more housing and the NDP believe that it's more intervention in the stock that's there. But what I would say to Nova Scotians is the housing stock that's needed is across the spectrum. That's why we're building student residences at NSCC campuses. That hasn't happened before. Nobody else made that happen. We're making it happen. That's why we're investing in public housing. That didn't happen under those two governments previous to us. We are making it happen. We are going from the housing plan, and we are on target. We're exceeding the target for new builds. And again, I'll just go back and say, just stop and think about this for 1 second. In 2023, record housing starts, the highest since the 80s. I think it's more than under the NDP and the Liberals added together.
In 2024, rents have gone up 70% in the last 3 years. 70%. Why is the public wait list at 7,000 people? Because people are being pushed out of their homes. Why do we have people living in tents? Because people are being pushed out of their homes. Why are they being pushed out of their homes? Because this government has not prioritized housing that people can actually afford. The number of housing starts is irrelevant if people can't afford to live there. And when I go from one end of this province to the other and I talk to people, I hear the same thing in every community. Yes, there is housing being built. No, I can't afford it, my kids can't afford it, my family can't afford it. So for this government to take meaningful action, we need to protect renters and allow them to remain in their homes, something that this government has refused to do and something that the Liberals before them fought against for 8 years.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chender. We want to get to our first question from a viewer tonight. I direct your attention to the monitor.
My name is Sylvia Paris Drummond, and I live in North End, Halifax. Folks will know the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a healthy village to raise a child. And to be healthy, we must have access to the things we need. My question is about wages and cost of living. What will your approach be? What will you do to address the imbalance between the wages we earn and the cost of living? And how will you address that imbalance that shows up for racialized people?
Mr. Houston, how do you respond?
Thank you, Sylvia, for this important question. We know that people are hurting in many ways. We know that families are falling behind in many ways, and government can't do it all. But there are certain things that government can and should do, and that's why we've put a number of kind of what we would call targeted supports in place One of those would be something I'm very proud of, and that's the school lunch program to support families. This is something that is providing free, healthy lunches to over 75,000 students in this province. The NDP didn't make that happen. The Liberals didn't make that happen. As a matter of fact, they voted against it when we tried to make it happen, but we pushed forward and we're making it happen. So that's a support for Nova Scotian families. I hear from families all over the province and students as well about how much this is helping them. But we know that those targeted supports, they miss a lot of people. That's why it's time in this province for a broader range of supports. That's why we're looking at lowering the HST. That's why we're looking at lowering personal income taxes. And we will continue to step up for Nova Scotians. We know those won't solve every challenge, but they'll leave more money in the hands of Nova Scotians across this province that they can put towards
we're running out of
groceries
time in this section,
and
so Mr. Churchill, please.
Seniors are struggling, young people are struggling. We've got the broadest and biggest tax reforms than either party. The NDP are happy with the highest taxes in the country. Mr. Houston's happy with the second highest taxes in the country. Our plan will give us the lowest taxes in Atlantic Canada, $3,000 back in families' pockets, in the average household's pockets, that they can use to go on that vacation that they deserve, that they can spend on their internet and telephone bills. We will go after the high prices of groceries by getting rid of the HST on the rest of groceries, bringing more competition to the grocery market instead of giving tax dollars for scene points like Mr. Houston has done, and by investing in free public transit so that seniors, families, young people can get to school, work, wherever they need to go to their doctor appointment for free. And we will double the seniors care grant. Okay. So our seniors have twice as much money in their pocket at the end of the day.
I'd like to hear from Ms. Chender on this just quickly before we move on to the next topic.
Thanks, Sylvia. I appreciate the question, and I appreciate your advocacy for the community. In terms of wages, we have always pushed for a path to a living wage. Tim Houston is talking about a slightly higher wage now, but it would have been great if he had done that in the last 3.5 years. What we are focused on is making sure that you can afford your life, and we have a lot of ways to do that. One of them is an affordable home tax credit. We know that in many historic African Nova Scotian communities, people do own their homes, but their wages, as you pointed out, might not keep up. Our affordable homes tax credit would give you a tax credit of around $900 every year to save up and to use for the essentials and for the life that you want. We would cut the HST off of all essentials. Tim's plan would take a penny off of every dollar, Zach's $2. We're going to take all of the tax off of the things that you can't live without: groceries, cell phone, and internet bills. And if you want to transition to a heat pump, off of that and the installation too. We're focused on making your life more affordable.
Okay, let's talk about raising a family and the challenges they face doing that in this province. As the province continues to grow, some schools are becoming very overcrowded. Portables are becoming the norm in some communities. How will you address this demand for space? And Ms. Chender, if you would start.
Well, thanks. You know, education is an enormous issue, and we hear from parents and teachers all the time on this, as well as school staff. We know it's a challenge, and we know that overcrowding is an enormous challenge. And this is only made worse by the fact that in the last 3.5 years, we've seen one new school open in HRM. This is where half of the population lives. And we hear the Minister of Education talk all of the time about how great portables are, but our school infrastructure is failing. Not only is that a challenge for the basic things, like the fact that many schools in this province have lead in the pipes, but it's also a challenge for educators and students to actually be able to learn. While we've pushed for any transparency or any plan around school capital, we don't get it. This government sits on it until it's time for an election and then promises communities schools like we're back in the old days of pantyhose and run. We don't really think that's how school capital construction should be handled. We believe that we should have a clear capital plan. We should engage communities, and in order to do that, we should have school boards, something that Zach got rid of and that Tim promised to bring back and then didn't.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chender. Over to you, Mr. Churchill. What would you do about demand for space and how to address it?
The overcrowding that we're having in our schools, the overcrowding in our hospitals, the overcrowding in our traffic and congestion, the overcrowding of our housing market are all linked to the Premier's drive to double our population. So we do have to deal with that. We have to bring people in. We want to grow, but it needs to be sustainable. The Premier's nominating twice as many people to come to our province than his own Department of Immigration says is sustainable. We're the only party that's willing to look at that and deal with it. Cost of living is major for families. We have a plan to give $3,000 back to the average household. support a plan that's going to stabilize and decrease power rates over time. And we also need to remember that grandparents are part of families too. And grandparents want to be a part of their grandkids' lives. Doubling the seniors' care grant and also taking rid of the deed transfer tax for seniors who want to downsize will give our seniors more financial ability to take their grandkids OT, to the movie, and spend time with them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Churchill. Mr. Houston.
Thanks so much. You can't talk about education without talking about supporting educators and supporting families and supporting students. My kids went to public school in this province, and they had a fantastic experience, wonderful teachers. We have smart students. We have great teachers. But what we need is a government that supports them. And that's what our government has done. In fact, when the teachers union was in negotiations with the province, I was home in Pictou County, and I got a call one night and when the negotiations were happening, and I said, how'd it go? And they said, not too good. So I said, listen, go across the hall and tell those NSTU folks that I'm going to drive up to the city and I'm going to come and chat with them. I got in my car. I drove up to the city. We met, I think, 9:30 that night for a few hours, and we got a deal done that supports teachers, supports students, and makes money available. Now, investing in education is something new for the teachers. That's why they're so pleased right now, because under the Liberal government, in fact, Mr. Churchill was the Minister of Education when teachers went on strike, when they weren't supported. And under the NDP government, in fact, teachers marched in the streets against the NDP government. You know why? Because they cut funding to education. We are not cutting funding to education. We are investing in education, and we will continue to do that. We're announced we're building new schools, but you know when the best time to build a new school was? To start it 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We're here, we're building them, we're supporting education and supporting those that are educating our kids.
And the schools that Mr. Houston has cut the ribbons on were started 5-7 years ago when I was Minister of Education. Also, the pre-primary program that was bought in. I'm sorry, I can't stand by while two leaders say that education funding was cut. It wasn't. Every 4-year-old in the province now has access to a free universal pre-primary program. Imagine the impact on families like my own, who have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old who got through that system. We now have also a big issue with childcare spaces. Hundreds of people, hundreds of families waiting to get childcare. That's impacting parents' ability to get back to work. It's impacting cost of living for our families. And right now in Nova Scotia, we are not allowing the private childcare centers, who are small business owners, mostly women operated, allowing them to expand their spaces at a time when the market needs more childcare spaces. That's another thing that we have to deal with, so that families have access, not just to pre-primary, but from 0 to 3 have access to more childcare in Nova Scotia.
Now the Nova Scotia
on the childcare spaces, we've opened up 4,000 childcare spaces. We know there's a big need. We also know that there is an issue with the agreement with the federal government, and that's because the Liberals signed that agreement on the eve of an election so they could have something to campaign on. It's very restrictive. Almost every other province took their time and negotiated a proper deal with the federal government and got a much better deal than Nova Scotia. But I will say, the first thing we did when we came into government is we sat down and we listened to teachers. We started something called Ideas for Education. And out of that was born the idea that we have to get cell phones out of the classroom. And when I talked to teachers, a teacher told me that he did a lesson and he couldn't believe how engaged the students were. He was at the end of the lesson already, and he's like, usually they drop off, but then he realized it's because they weren't on their phones, they were paying attention. So there's a lot we can do to support teachers and educators.
Well, talking about being in the classroom, the Nova Scotia Teachers Union has been raising the alarm about violence in schools. We've seen incidents where staff have been severely harmed, and they also report there's not enough support for kids with complex needs, and that's adding stress on staff. How do you make schools safer and improve learning? Ms. Chender.
That's a really important question. I know a woman who I was talking to the other day who left her retail job to go back into the classroom as an EPA and told me she was assaulted on the very first day. This is a real issue, and it's an issue that we have been pushing for answers for, and we have gotten nowhere. And I think I heard Tim just say that educators are happy. Educators are not happy. The educators we talk to say that the fact that we have not actually addressed school violence, the fact that we have a major workforce issue in our schools, not enough teachers and school staff and support staff to support those children with complex needs, and not enough school capital is a huge issue, and we need to address it. We need to address it through hiring those teachers. We need to address it by making sure that we are implementing the inclusive education plan that the Liberals left on the table and that Tim has not acted on. And we need to make sure that we have the resources in our classrooms that we need and that the Auditor General outlined in a report very recently that this government has not acted on.
All right, Mr. Churchill, just quickly before we leave the topic of teachers.
We need more support for teachers for the non-teaching work, child and youth care practitioners that we brought into the system, more TAs, more EPAs. We do have to finish the inclusive education plan. I mean, we stopped it because we lost government, and Mr. Houston has not followed through with that. But we do need those supports, not just for teachers, but also for the kids and families who are in desperate need of them.
Okay, let's talk about power bills now. How would a government that you lead help Nova Scotians with their power bills? Ms. Chender.
Thanks for the question, Tom. When we are not in an election and not in the legislature and we're in our offices, one of the things that we hear about the most are people who come in and say, I can't pay my power bill, I'm $500 in arrears, they're shutting it off, what do I do? We deal with this literally every day. And the challenge is there isn't really an answer other than a payment plan. But if you're hand to mouth and month to month, a payment plan isn't going to work. That's why we are finally going to implement a low-income energy rate, a universal service program, something we've been pushing for over a decade now. This is a program that would make sure that people actually have help with their bills, that they are able to transition to clean energy if and when they can, and that Nova Scotia Power can finally implement an arrears forgiveness program, an amnesty program, so that people's entire lives are not held back by the fact that they don't have enough to pay for something that is essential in this province, and that's heat.
The issue is it's not just low-income Nova Scotians that are struggling to pay their bills and their power bills, which have gone up close to 20% under this premium. Working families, middle-income earners are struggling to make ends meet right now, and under Ms. Chender's plan, those folks are going to be paying more in their power bills to subsidize her rates. We need lower power bills for everybody. We will, in the short term, increase the heating assistance rebate program to $1,000 for every household that meets the financial criteria. But we also need to have a plan to get off coal. We are burning the same amount of coal as we were 3 years ago. And right now, coal is expensive. You know what the cheapest form of energy is right now? Wind energy. Mr. Houston is driving wind energy in this province, but it's all to ship green hydrogen overseas to Germany, potentially. If we want to get off coal, if we want to have more renewable energy here, bring down emissions, bring down power rates, wind energy does need to be applied to our grid, to your power bills, to drive that price down.
Now, Mr. Houston, you want to put a cap in place. The last time you made legislative changes to power regulation, it had a negative effect on NSP's credit rating, which makes it more costly for the company to run. How do you cap rates and prevent it from affecting the credit rating and ultimately ratepayers?
There's lots of high-paid, smart folks at Nova Scotia Power and Emera, and they should manage their business. My only interest is in the ratepayers of this province, and we will take every action we possibly can to protect them. But I have to say how insincere it is of Ms. Chender and Mr. Churchill and the NDP and the Liberals to talk about anything around the cost of utility and fuel without talking about the carbon tax, which makes everything in this province more expensive. I am the only one who will stand up against the carbon tax. And I know the Liberals want a carbon tax under a different name. It's still a carbon tax. It impacts the price of everything. The best thing we can do to support Nova Scotians with affordability and with just getting by in everyday life is stand up to the carbon tax. And fortunately, for the greening of the grid and getting more renewables on so we have more rate stability in the long term, we actually put a wonderful plan forward to the federal government. It was called Better Than a Carbon Tax. And do you know what the NDP did? They fought against it. And do you know what the Liberals did? They fought against it. Well, they are the voices of inaction. We are the voices of action. We are the only party that can make it happen in this province.
Let's talk about
we
action.
don't need a carbon tax in this province. We will stand up against it at every single opportunity because you deserve it.
It's somewhat ironic that you are saying that you are the voice of action, Tim, when all you do is blame Ottawa for the challenges that people are facing today in Nova Scotia. An NDP government would waive the motive fuel tax. That's a gas tax. That's the tax that makes it hard for people to get from A to B. You have complained about it for 3.5 years and blamed Ottawa. We would actually do it. You have talked about how the cost of living is high and it's Ottawa's fault, and yet you have taken zero action on taxes in your 3.5 years in government. Why should people believe that you're going to do it now?
Mr. Churchill, you wanted to get in on this?
Mr. Houston has had signs on his political signs for 2 years saying vote against the carbon tax. Guess what? The carbon tax is still here. If you re-elect him, it'll be back again. The only party, if you look at our platforms, that has a solution to this issue is ours. We will end the carbon tax by bringing in a cap-and-trade system that will do our part to reduce emissions, give money back to you so you can pay for your heat pumps, get rebates for your electric vehicles, and it will also take 10 to 15 cents off the pump. Mr. Houston is charging HST on top of the carbon tax. If you cared about it that much, we would actually see an alternative like we have in Quebec and other jurisdictions where we do our part for the environment, give rebates to people, but also take the price off the pumps for consumers. Mr. Houston would rather kick and scream and whine than actually do his job and negotiate a better deal for you.
Mr. Houston, if you want to jump in here quickly before we move on.
Thank you. Listen, I'm the only leader on this stage that is only looking out for the interests of Nova Scotians and not beholden to a political party. The NDP are beholden to Jagmeet Singh in Ottawa. The Liberals are beholden to Justin Trudeau in Ottawa. I am only beholden to Nova Scotians. And the carbon tax adds 24 cents a litre to the price of gas. The fuel tax that's there, it's used for roads and bridges, and we need investments in roads and bridges. And perhaps other parties aren't interested in investing in roads because they want to get cars outlawed in this province, but we know that we need to invest in roads and infrastructure and bridges. And the best way to support Nova Scotians is get rid of the useless carbon tax that just siphons money out of the hands of Nova Scotians, puts it in Ottawa, doesn't protect the planet. We had a plan to do that, and takes it away from things that we could use here in Nova Scotia.
You found $45 million for Google because they knocked on your door and asked. I'm sure you could reallocate the budget so that we could pay for roads and give Nova Scotians a break. Instead, he wants to fight with Ottawa and not deliver the promises until they come wrapped up in a campaign package. I don't think that you have credibility on this issue.
All right, we have to move on to healthcare at this point. From wait times to finding a family doctor, access to timely healthcare is a big factor for many Nova Scotians. How would you assess the state of healthcare in this province right now, Mr. Churchill?
Here's what I've heard from Nova Scotians on this issue. They are tired of the finger pointing on healthcare. And I think they have a right to demand better from us. The fact is that all parties have had their kick of the can in government over the last 20 years. All parties have spent more money on health care, and health outcomes are getting worse in this province. Mr. Houston promised to fix it. He said he had the solutions. Here's where we're at. Twice as many people without a family doctor. Emergency rooms that are closing more than ever before. Wait times tripling to get people from ambulances into our emergency departments. We have to get back to the fundamentals in healthcare. There's been a lot of money spent on flashy things like phone apps, Google search engines, while people don't have a family doctor. We will build 40 and expand 40 collaborative care clinics, health clinics from one end of the province to the other, which we know bring doctors back into family medicine and are a better model at attaching patients to family doctors. Healthcare can't just be about expensive Band-Aids for the system. It has to be about improving your health. These clinics will also be focused on early detection of illnesses that we know we have high rates of in Nova Scotia. And we also have to help people be preventative when it comes to their health care as well, which is why we'll take the HST off of gyms. But we have to get back to the fundamentals. People need a family doctor. If we continue on this track, there's going to be 500,000 people in this province without a family doctor, and that is going to be devastating for the system and devastating for people's health.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Churchill. Mr. Houston, how do you feel the state of healthcare is in the province right now?
It's a work in progress for sure. We inherited a mess. That's just the reality. For 12 years before us, the healthcare system was managed by the NDP and the Liberals, and they looked the other way while things crumbled. Well, we're not looking the other way. We are taking action. And the reality is, as I said in 2021, it would take time. And it's taking time. But there is incredible progress. The NDP and the Liberals may not want to talk about this, but today in this province, there are 250 more doctors than when we started. And there are a lot more coming, and I know there are a lot more coming because we're going to open up a medical school at Cape Breton University. Do you know when I was in Cape Breton to announce that medical school, I left the stage, and there was a young lady standing there who was a paramedic. And she said, I am now going to go to medical school and practice medicine here in my home province, in my home community. And I said, that's incredible. Was it always your dream? And she said, it was always my dream, but I never thought it could happen. But now that I know I can go to medical school in my community and make a difference, I'm going to do it. So there are more doctors. There are almost 2,000 more nurses in this province today because of a piece of legislation that we passed called the Patient Access to Care, that both of these parties, the NDP argued against it and voted against the Patient Access to Care. The Liberals argued against the Patient Access to Care Act. It is making a difference. It is that act that has allowed us to create 1 million new primary care appointment opportunities every year. There are 1 million new primary care appointment opportunities in this province today compared to when we start. And people are using them. They're in pharmacies, they're in mobile clinics, they're in urgent treatment centers. It is a work in progress. I am committed to seeing it through. I will make sure it is seen through. But we are on a good path, a much better path than when I started.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. Ms. Chender.
Thank you. I think when I think about primary care, which obviously is an enormous issue, I think about the fact that we need focus. And my focus is on people like Amber and her son Sawyer, who I met in Pictou County, who waited in an emergency room for 14 hours. Imagine a new mom, and I have had that experience of being in a hospital as a new mom with a feverish baby, you don't know what's wrong, and you're there for 14 hours. That is completely unacceptable, and it's because of the lack of primary care. Tim can talk about all the appointments he's created and make us think that appointments are actually attachment to primary care, but they're not. What we need is for people to be attached to primary care. That's what people want. And our plan would do that. It would make sure that in the first year, 15 doctor clinics across this province would open collaborative care centers where people could be attached no matter where they live. New Democrats pioneered collaborative care in this province. We opened collaborative emergency centers, which the Liberals then abandoned. We're going to come back and we're going to do it again. This government has spent a lot of money on primary care. They have spent money paying Google to search your phone records and to search your doctor records. They've spent money on a hotel that they were told that they shouldn't use for healthcare. They've spent money on apps and tech that have done nothing to attach people to primary care. This is what Nova Scotians want. This is our focus.
Well, what is a
The NDP are talking about opening
we're on
15,
a good path
15
for
collaborative
healthcare
care clinics.
when we have double the amount of people without a family doctor. Only Mr. Houston can say now that with 150,000 people without a family doctor that we're now on a good path, when it was 60,000 before he entered the Premier's office. It was a crisis. Now that there's 150,000 people without a family doctor, we're on a good path. I want to correct something that Mr. Houston said. It wasn't either the Liberals or the NDP managing the healthcare system. It was actually healthcare professionals and a professional board and doctors managing our healthcare system. Mr. Houston changed that by firing healthcare professionals and putting in a partisan conservative lawyer with no healthcare experience. And you wonder why we're seeing the situation get worse and worse and worse. And the fact is if we don't get people family doctors, if we give up on the family practice model, which I think Mr. Houston has, we're going to be in more trouble. He says we brought in 250 new doctors. Guess what? 10 net new family doctors to our system. In the same year, Mr. Houston brought in 30,000 new people to live in our
Mr.
province.
Houston, you want to
do the
jump
math?
in?
It
Yeah,
doesn't work.
that's not accurate. And I just want to say to Nova Scotians, collaborative clinics, health clinics that the Liberals are talking about open in 20 and then 20 more, the NDP 15 and 15 more, I believe, something in that order of magnitude. I just want to tell Nova Scotians, in the last 3 years, we opened 75 of those. We actually have another 40 in the works already. This is how we're attaching people. But you know what you really need to open those clinics? You need doctors. That's why we're recruiting, that's why we're retaining, but that's also why we're opening the International Medical Graduate Assessment Clinic. This is a really important thing. What this is a clinic where doctors in another country can come here and have their skills assessed, not in the 2 years that it has been, but in a 12-week period, actually interact with patients and at the end of that get a license or not. This is a first in North America. This will add 45 to 50 family doctors alone to our system next year. And you know what happened when I told
the 75 clinics you say you've opened are actually taking
and what
patients?
I said to her when I told her about this, you know what she said? She said, I'm going to run in the house right now and call my granddaughter. She's a doctor in Australia, and this is her opportunity to come back. This clinic is focused on Canadians. It will focus on Nova Scotians who want to come back here. These are real solutions. They're not overnight solutions, but we are making incredible progress. And that is why in September alone, we attached 20,000 people to a primary care provider. In October, another 15. We
20,000 were
are
taken
on
off
the
list.
road.
We
It
don't know
took
if they
some
were-
time.
if they were
Yes, it
attached.
took time. It did take time. I understand that. I'm
We heard
also
from-
an
we heard
impatient
from- we heard
person,
from people that were
but
taken
we
off
are
that,
making
and they
progress
didn't even
things
know it
are improving.
because they went to a primary care clinic.
Let's
People
do-
were taken off that list that Mr. Houston hid for 5 months, by the way, who didn't know they were being taken off the list, who still want a family doctor. Because we have a situation right now where politics is governing our healthcare system. And that means hiding information from people when the numbers don't provide evidence for what the Premier's saying to you. Talk to doctors. You know what? I've talked to doctors. I've talked to nurses. Go talk to the doctors at the VG, where there's more mice than staff in that building, where we have the highest infection rate for wounds in the country, and tell those folks that the healthcare system is getting better. Again, we spend the vast majority of the resources in healthcare in the last 3 months of somebody's life.
I think we
if
should-
we do not change our emphasis on preventative health, on early diagnosing, better attachment to primary care, that situation is going to get worse and worse and worse, and people's health outcomes are going to
Let's
deteriorate.
talk numbers. Tim says 20,000 people were attached to primary care. The list went down by less than that number. I'm guessing some have moved away, some have died, and we know some were taken off because they gave up. So that 20,000 number is not substantiated. Tim says he's opened 75 collaborative care clinics in this province since he was elected. Do they take patients? The one down the road for me doesn't. You've got to go through Maple to get there. So the reality is we are not attaching people to primary care. And when we look at all of the various issues that all the parties are talking about in this election, women's health, cancer care, these are all things that would be fundamentally addressed by attaching people to primary care. And that is something that this government has failed to do. The wait list was 70,000 people when Zach was the health minister and Tim took over. The wait list is now 145,000 people. There is not a world in where that math leads us to believe that things have gotten better. But they can and they should.
Okay.
It requires focus.
We want to get to another
Just-
question
just
question
if
here.
I-
It has
if
to
I
do
could-
with.
If I could on the attachment thing, because I think it's a really important issue for Nova Scotians. And yes, well, the list went from 75,000 to, it actually went to 165, and now it's decreasing as we make progress. But during that time that the list increased, we actually attached 100,000 people. But this is how bad the state of healthcare was when we came in. We were literally bailing and bailing and bailing. And then we were able to stabilize it. And today there are more doctors, 250 more doctors. There are more nurses, almost 2,000 more nurses. There are more options for care. Is there more work to be done? Yes, absolutely. I'm committed to doing it. But I will make it happen. And we are taking over from parties where there was inaction in healthcare.
Okay.
We are taking action.
Thank you for that, Mr. Houston. We want to get to another question from our audience. It has to do with mental health. Have a look at the monitor.
Hi, my name is Miranda Purcell. I live in Halifax, and my question is, what do you plan to do to address the huge wait lists for mental health services in Nova Scotia?
All right, Mr. Churchill, what would you do about that?
First, I want to address this. I mean, only Premier Houston can say that the healthcare situation is stabilizing when things like how many people need a family doctor has doubled, when emergency room closures are happening more now than ever before, when more people are dying in hospital than at any time in the last 6 years. That is not stabilization. That is a worsening of our healthcare system. Another promise that Mr. Houston made was universal free mental health coverage. We have not seen that. Put that on the list of broken promises that Mr. Houston has made to you all. Mental health is a big issue. Our hospitals are over capacity for inpatient or outpatient care. We need to invest in mental health and addiction hubs like we previously committed to make sure that those folks that need inpatient access for addictions and mental health issues have that. I've talked to parents in my own riding that have brought their child to the emergency room time and time again and haven't been able to get them help.
Okay, now, Mr. Houston, you said you broke that promise. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so listen, thank you for this incredibly important question. When we formed government, one of the first things we did was create a minister for addictions and mental health. This is somebody at the highest level of government to focus on addictions and mental health. So it's not just buried in the healthcare file as it was previous to us. And so that minister focuses on it. And under that minister's guidance, yes, universal mental health is something we're committed to. And there's the first pilots of that are out there right now, mostly with youth in autism and other areas like that. But it's a pilot and it is in progress. But what we have done is we've opened up 4 new mental health day hospitals across the province, and also 10 new recovery support systems across the province, buildings across the province. So we're opening up access to care for those that need it, and we want to be there when they need it, when the person needs that care in that moment. And that is one of the benefits of the app, which I know the NDP complain about and the Liberals complain about the app, but it opens up access. And when somebody in the middle of the night is in a crisis and wants to reach out, they can go through the app and have an interaction that might be just what they needed at that point in time. So this is an incredibly important question. There are more mental health professionals in this province than when we started today, and the wait list, the time to see somebody is shrinking down for sure. We know there's work to be done. We'll continue to do it, but we're the only party that can make it happen.
Ms. Chender is looking to get in on this.
Thank you for the question, Miranda. I really appreciate it, and it's a question that we get so often, particularly from young people, because life is really hard right now. And I want to say something that's really important. An app does not help you if you're not in crisis. If you are having a mental health crisis, please do not open your app. I know lots of people who have had mental health challenges, and telling someone to take a deep breath and that things are going to be better tomorrow is not the right approach. What we need are actual resources that will help people when they need it. This is one of the reasons that we have been pushing for and have promised a different kind of crisis response, which we know we need. An actual mental health emergency response that can attend along with police officers if needed when there are situations where people are actually in crisis. I ran into somebody on the campaign trail knocking on a door who said, "I've been hoping you'd come by because I want to tell you that the promise on universal mental health care has been broken. The idea that they're hiring more people isn't true. Yes, they hired more intake staff. I have 10 more people answering phones, and we have 0 new clinicians. This budget that Tim has put forward has no new money for doctors, no new money for clinicians. That's what we need. We need access to mental health care in this province, and we don't have it right now."
That we presented in our platform, there's more inpatient care in our hospitals for addictions and mental health. Also, collaborative care clinics, we will push to have mental health clinicians there. We also have to tackle the issues that are affecting our young people. I spoke with a mother the other day in Tim Hortons whose son committed suicide. Deep depression built over lack of housing, the affordability issues, did not believe he could afford a future here. We also have to tackle the issues that are creating this sense of hopelessness with our young people, and that is making sure there's more affordable housing options and making sure life is affordable again here in Nova Scotia, and we have the best plan to tackle those things.
Okay, thank you. We are moving on to the growth section of our debate tonight. Communities across Nova Scotia are seeing rapid growth, and we're seeing the pressures that come with that increase in population. How would your government strike the balance between bringing in the immigrant population needed with how much more people our province can actually handle? And we'll start with you, Mr. Houston.
Thank you so much. This is obviously a really important question. It's on the minds of Nova Scotians. Nova Scotians are concerned about the growth. I am also concerned. This is why we've dialed back and really been strategic and really focused on the immigration portion of population growth. There are multiple parts of population growth. Some are just people who moved away but are moving home to Nova Scotia. Some are on immigration, but we've been really focused and strategic on the immigration file. It is only targeted at people in the skilled trades who can help us build those homes we're talking about, and people in healthcare that can help provide care to you. So it's very focused and very strategic. We hear the concerns of Nova Scotians. We know that there are infrastructure needs. We're committed to making those investments. We've been working with municipalities on those as well. But another part of the population growth that I think is really important is around the asylum seekers. And when Prime Minister Trudeau wanted to send 6,000 asylum seekers to Nova Scotia, I said, listen, we are kind, compassionate people, but we can't do it. The NDP, and the Liberals both said that we should accept those 6,000 asylum seekers. We just can't do it. I think this is really important because you can't talk about population growth without talking about all the various components of it. So on the immigration front, we hear you. We're very, very focused, very strategic, very targeted on skilled trades and healthcare workers. But on the asylum seeker thing, we have to be realistic and put the right message forward to Ottawa.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Houston. Ms. Chender, you're next.
Thanks. I appreciate the question. I want to start by saying that Nova Scotia is a province that's been built by immigrants, and Canada is a country that's been built by immigrants. And we have major pressures right now. We have a 1% vacancy rate in our housing market. We have totally unsustainable costs, and our schools are overcrowded. We know that. That is because of neglect. We need to build as we grow. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on the point that this is a failure of infrastructure. It's not a failure of people. We have underfunded our universities, so they bring in more students. We have underfunded our agricultural sector, so they bring in more temporary foreign workers. And then we blame them, the workers, the most vulnerable people, when we haven't built, you haven't built enough housing. You haven't addressed the healthcare problems we have. And it's unfair and it's scapegoating. And I think we need to acknowledge that for what it is. And I want to say one more thing. This government has been recruiting healthcare workers from refugee camps. So this whole idea that there is the right kind of person needs to be addressed. There are the right kind of people for the right kind of jobs in every corner of this world. And what it takes is a plan to address our needs here at home, to make sure that we are building the infrastructure that we need, we are building the schools that we need, and we are actually addressing affordable housing and not scapegoating people when we've failed to do those things.
Thank you, Ms. Chender. Mr. Churchill, it's your turn.
Pro-immigration policy to grow our population sustainably. Mr. Houston has been driving population growth for the revenue that it's given him, which he has spent lavishly all over the place without impacting your life in a positive way. He tells you that the people that he's nominating are all skilled trades and healthcare professionals. If you look at the documents in the immigration department, the majority of people that are being nominated are actually not from those professions, even close. Less than 14% are. So that is not true. You look at what he wants to spend money on, taking the tolls off the bridges at a time when we need to put that money into public works and growing our infrastructure. We will do that, investing in more cell phone towers, investing in a new bridge in Halifax, investing in twinning our highways, and investing in new homes. The only platform that has a commitment to build 80,000 homes, which if we don't hit, we will see this housing crisis get worse. So yes, we do have a crisis right now. I would say the largest reason for that is because Mr. Houston has been driving this population growth, I think, for the revenue only. But we can invest in the right things, not taking tolls off bridges, but keeping that money actually in our road infrastructure, in our civic infrastructure, which we need if we're going to sustain that growth over the long run.
Ms. Chender, with the growth that we are seeing, traffic, especially in HRM, is becoming a major headache. What needs to be done to help people who find themselves spending more time stuck behind the wheel?
The thing that we need to do is to finally have a transit system that actually fits the city that we live in, and we don't. And it's not just HRM, it's CBRM, and it's lots of other points in between. There is a plan. There's a bus rapid transit plan that has been in the works for a very long time that would make an enormous difference. And even if you're not a person who takes transit, there are many other people who will. I was driving over the bridge every day in a vehicle with two people, counting the number of people who are crossing the other way by themselves in their car. It was like 80%. And the reality is, if we had a transit system that was reliable and affordable and got you where you needed to go when you needed to be there, we would massively impact the congestion, and even with the construction going on, we would fund that from the beginning.
Mr. Houston, how would you respond to the issues of traffic and congestion?
This is such an important question. So when we came into government, the budget for roads and bridges and such was somewhere around $900 million. We've spent almost $1.6 billion in each of the years we've been here because it just didn't happen. It didn't happen under the previous governments. We're making it happen. But really on the traffic issue, this is like The time you spend in your car when you're just trying to go to work or to your appointment or to your children's activities or something, that's a tax on your time. It's a waste of your time. We want to give that time back to you, and that's why we're looking at, we'll bring the discussion about rail to a head once and for all. It's been discussed in this province for a long time. We'll do a feasibility study to see if it can actually be done. That's why we're investing in the high-speed ferry to Bedford. That's why we've announced a number of connector roads and bypasses, and we will make the investments to give you back your time, because right now what we're at is that we have a bus goes off a bridge in the Bedford area, and traffic is snarled up for hours and hours and hours, in every direction. It's not working for Nova Scotians. So we're committed. It's part of our campaign. It's one of the reasons about this campaign right now is to make serious investments in infrastructure. We need the support of the other levels of government, of course. We need the support of Ottawa. That's why I'm asking Nova Scotians, one of the reasons I'm asking Nova Scotians for a new, fresh mandate. So who's ever in Ottawa will take Nova Scotia seriously and help us invest in and catch up on our infrastructure, which has been neglected for so long.
Mr. Houston is going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. It's going to get up to $1 billion once we need to replace the McKay Bridge to take the tolls off. Experts say that's going to increase congestion. That's money coming out of our public works budget. We have the worst roads, as rural Nova Scotians like myself know, in the whole country. There was a recent report on that. Mr. Houston wants to take up to $1 billion over time out of our road budgets just to cover the tolls, because he thinks it's a politically good thing to do. We need to invest in real things, like a new bridge in Halifax, like twinned highways all the way down to Yarmouth from the 103 and the 101, and making sure that we invest in public transit. We are the only party committing to free public transit in this province and giving money to municipalities and rural community providers to expand their public transit so that more seniors, so that more family members, so more mothers, so more students can get to school by using our public transit, because we need to expand our public transit, but also we are the only party that wants to make it free for you.
Okay, Ms. Chender and then Mr. Houston on this.
I need to chime in here and come back to the question, which was about congestion and HRM, and I'm certain that no one on this stage spends more time in their car taking kids to lessons than I do. If I'm not at the legislature or talking to these two or in my constituency office, I'm driving to soccer, or I'm driving to dance, or I'm driving to basketball, or I'm driving between all three. And I will tell you that transit will make an enormous difference in this city. I have a teenager who, because of the great work of a number of people in the municipality, working with some of the people at the Joint Regional Transportation Agency, is able to avail herself of a free bus pass. My teenagers have free bus passes and they use them. But free isn't the solution. The solution is a transit system that works. Because I live near a transit hub, and because I'm in the center of the city, my teenagers can get themselves where they need to go. But we know that that's not true for most of the city and most of the province. We need to invest in transit. We need to make it work. We can talk about future highway projects, which need to happen. We can talk about future rail projects, which need to happen. Right now, we can have more buses, more ferries, get people where they need to go in a way that makes sense and eases traffic.
Mr. Houston.
Thank you, and I think this is, I'm so glad that I heard the Joint Regional Transportation Authority mentioned. That's something that our government created. It didn't exist before our government. We created it to look at what is possible, and that's a group that is getting recognition across the country, and even in many parts of the United States are looking at Nova Scotia and saying that is a great idea. And what they're doing is looking at how do we move people around quicker, and you can put all the buses on the road that you want, but if they're all a half hour late, they don't help Nova Scotians. And as somebody who works at a hospital told me, there was one day when they were headed for work that every single bus in the Metro Transit system was noted as at least a half hour late. And they asked me, how do I rely on that? I can't go to work a half hour late. I can't get. So what we need to do is actually fix the problem. In the Joint Regional Transportation Authority and investments in roads and connectors, that's how you fix the program.
But you know how transit works, right? I just want to be clear. If we have more buses that actually work, that go where they need to go, you have fewer cars and it fixes the problem. I just think we need to be clear about this. And the buses won't be stuck because there will be fewer cars because people will be on
And the communities
transit.
that have moved to free public transit have seen a major uptake in the amount of people that want to use it. And we've seen major savings with people that end up going into public transit, up to $5,000 a year for those of you that want to get out of your cars and into a free public transit bus, either in Halifax or Yarmouth or Sydney. That's $5,000 a year back in your pocket. And,
Right.
and the jurisdictions that have done this have seen reduction in emissions, reduction in traffic, and more money back in people's pockets.
Okay, we now want to move to another viewer question. If you'd have a look at the monitor, please.
Hi, my name is Pedro Ferriz. I'm an international student living in Halifax. And my question would be, what would your government do to retain international graduates in the province?
Mr. Houston, what do you say to that question?
Thank you, and I know how stressful it is for our international students who are here and having a great education experience and have so much uncertainty about their future. I get it. I know how stressful that is. But the reality is our immigration focus right now in this province is on skilled trades and healthcare workers. So for people in the skilled trades and studying in healthcare, you have a much better chance of immigrating to Nova Scotia. That's just the reality of our situation right now. Maybe in the future that may change. I know we have so many wonderful international students here, and I know how much they add to our communities. But the reality of our province right now is we need to focus our immigration streams on skilled trades and healthcare workers. Thank you for the important question.
I mean, the Premier's ability to say one thing and do another. He's been driving population growth for the last 3 years, successfully hitting his targets to double the population. And now he's saying we don't want any more people. I mean, I'm not shocked anymore by the fact that the Premier will do that. The fact is, if we want people to stay here, if we want to have a successful immigration plan, if we want international students to stay, they need a place to live. They need a place to live that's affordable. They also need to not pay the highest taxes in the country, because that drives people away too when they see what the cost of living is here in Nova Scotia. And again, we've gone from being one of the most affordable places to live in the country to one of the most expensive in the last 3 years alone. We have a plan that will build housing that we need on the market side. We'll invest in affordable housing units, in co-op housing units, and also it goes the furthest to protect renters.
Ms. Chender,
This
how
is
do you
important for
respond?
international students, because if they can't
Thank
live
you.
here, they can't stay.
I want to say thank you to Pedro for asking the question, and I know it's a challenging time for students right across this province. And the reality is that we don't have a student housing plan. We actually don't have a good university funding plan. We have separate agreements with the different universities, and as in many other areas, we have a government that's playing favorites. This means the shortfall is being made up with your tuition, and that's not fair. And so we think that the best way forward is to address housing, to make sure that student housing plan that Tim promised 3 years ago actually comes to pass. Not dorms, but places in our cities and towns that have universities where people can actually afford to live, that you can afford groceries. We know that foreign students in this province are attending food banks more than any other cohort, and that is unacceptable. If you come to Nova Scotia, we'll treat you as a Nova Scotian. We'll make sure that you can get a good education, and we'll make sure that if you have the skills that we need, we'll find a pathway for you to stay.
All right, now it is time for us to move on to climate action. From floods to wildfires to hurricanes, Nova Scotians have been hit hard by a number of disasters attributed to climate change. It's cost lives, millions of dollars. How would your party keep Nova Scotians safer from the effects of climate change? Starting with Ms. Chender, you've got 90 seconds.
Thanks for the question. You know, when we talk about these kinds of natural disasters and our coastlines, I think about Nadine Hunt, who's an activist in Mabu who, rallied for years around provincial parks and fought this government so that they wouldn't put a golf course in the provincial park that's right next to her home, but also is advocating along with coastal municipalities from one end of this province to the other to finally proclaim the Coastal Protection Act. We have a piece of legislation that Tim and Zach and I all stood up and voted for together in the legislature that would protect our coastal communities, towns, and villages from the ravages of sea level rise, and this government has abandoned it. We would immediately implement the Coastal Protection Act. We would make sure that those bylaws were regionally sensitive, but we would address the issue that Tim has put forward for not passing it, which is that coastal property owners deserve to do what they want with their own properties. The reality is that works if you're Tim's friend, but it doesn't work if you live in a community where you enjoy a public beach, or you enjoy a public beach that was a public beach until there's suddenly a seawall there and the erosion has left it. Not only does that take away the public common and our ability as coastal people to enjoy our coastline, it also makes sea level change so much more dangerous. We have been demanding climate action, and in government, we will deliver it immediately.
Mr. Churchill.
We would proclaim the Coastal Protection Act that we wrote as a government on day one. This is something that Ms. Chender and I certainly agree with. It's something that Mr. Houston at once agreed to and also promised to you. Put it on the list of broken promises. That needs to happen. We'll do it day one. We also need to make sure that we're reducing our emissions. We are burning the same amount of coal as we did 3 years ago. Wind energy should be primarily applied to our grid here to reduce emissions and also make your power bills lower. We also need to support our sectors and our infrastructure who are in jeopardy when it comes to severe weather events and climate change. That's our fisheries sector, that's our farming sector in particular. We are committed to providing funding to make sure that climate adaptation can happen in our farming sector and making sure we're investing in the data that we need to protect our fishing sector. These two economic sectors are so important from a revenue standpoint, from a community standpoint, and we also have to be looking at the economic impacts of climate change as well. But the Coastal Protection Act will prevent people from building in high-risk areas. It will potentially save life and property, and it also saves liability to the taxpayer. Because what happens when damage happens to these properties? The liability comes back to taxpayers. And we can avoid all of those things just by doing what Mr. Houston promised to do and pass an act that was written by the previous Liberal government.
All right, Mr. Houston, how would you protect Nova Scotians from the effects of climate change?
Thank you. And certainly in the time I've been Premier, 7 times we stood up the Provincial Coordination Centre in response to a natural disaster. 7 times. And I can't even tell you how difficult every single one of those, especially loss of life in the floods. These are devastating things for Nova Scotians. 7 times, and I think in the 10 years before, it stood up once or twice. So there's no question our climate is changing. So a couple of things in the response to a disaster. This is the thinking behind the Nova Scotia Guard. That's a big idea. It's a new idea, and big new ideas are hard. But that would be a response in the moment. But I think as we move forward and think how are we better prepared, certainly the Coastal Protection Act is an interesting discussion because it is something that passed the legislature. But to actually get to the next step and be a law, it has to be something that's called proclaimed. Well, the Liberals didn't proclaim the Coastal Protection Act in 2019. They did not proclaim it in 2020. They did not proclaim it in 2021 for the time they were there. So when I came into the Premier's office, I basically found this file on the desk. It was covered in about an inch of dust because nobody had looked at it. The NDP hadn't asked any questions about it in 2019, 2020, 2021. But I said, what are we going to do? We have to do something. Inaction is not my style, and it's not what Nova Scotians have a right to expect. So we looked at it, and I think I know why it wasn't proclaimed, because we have 13,000 kilometers of coastline, extremely diverse coastline, sandy beaches, rocky cliffs, bogs. It is very diverse. And a one-size edict, one-size-fits-all edict from Halifax, it's just not going to cut it for the diversity of our coastline. So we said, look, we have to do something. So what we did is said, we'll work with municipalities, we'll work with Nova Scotians, we'll give them the information on the erosion maps and the flooding maps. We'll hire resources at the provincial level to support the municipalities. We are doing something.
Okay,
in the face of governments, that did nothing.
Ms. Chender,
the mayors and wardens and councillors of municipalities from every area of this province rallied in front of the legislature not a few months ago to tell you they didn't want what you were offering. They told you that they wanted legislation to help them. There are so many coastal communities that are vulnerable, and your one staff position that you're funding is not going to do it, and they have told you that. The warden of Pictou County has told you that. The mayors of Lunenburg have told you that. They're doing it themselves. They don't want to. You like to say they're an example. They're a reluctant example because of your inaction and because they took action. We have to protect our coastlines. This idea that it's an optional thing, that it was left on the desk, is not true. There was important consultation happening because there are regional things that need to be addressed in each area. In my region, in Dartmouth South, Tim's friend wanted to create a dump of pyritic slate in the middle of downtown. There is no protection of our coastline under this government, and this is something that is absolutely imperative as we meet the challenges that climate change is bringing.
Here's the reality of our coastline, and Mr. Houston knows what he said isn't true, that regulations were being developed and then the act would have been proclaimed. And he can say otherwise all he wants, but people who know the facts on that. But guess what? Doesn't care about municipal boundaries, the coastline. It's a provincial coastline. It goes around the whole province. It takes provincial action to properly protect it. And again, this is about protecting our environment, our beaches. It's also about protecting people and their property from developing in areas where we know there's erosion, where there's flood risk, where there's risk of serious damage. It protects taxpayers from liability when these things happen. These are tragic situations. We know they're going to get worse. And this will be one of the broken promises that Mr. Houston made that I think we will come to regret the most in our province.
We want to continue with the protecting of coastline, but how would a government you lead handle protecting that stretch of land that connects us to the rest of Canada, the Chignecto Isthmus? Mr. Houston.
This is incredibly important, a trade corridor. It's absolutely, it's literally our connection to Canada. And it's at risk. So we believe that because of the national significance of this piece of land, the federal government should pay for it. I believe that very, very strongly. The federal government doesn't want to pay for it. They want to offer us half. And the NDP said we should just take the half and we should be happy. And the Liberals have said we should just take the half and we should be happy. Well, I don't think that's fair to Nova Scotians. If this was in Quebec, the federal government would be paying 100%, and I can assure you that every single elected member in Quebec would be standing up for Quebec. We can stand with Nova Scotians.
Is that we have a premier that's playing politics with the Liberals.
The leader of the Liberals wants to stand with the Liberal Party. The leader of the NDP wants to stand with the federal NDP. I am standing with Nova Scotians. But I want to assure Nova Scotia, in the meantime, we are not waiting for the money bit to be figured out. There are shovels in the ground now. There's a lot of work being done to make sure we protect those communities and protect our province.
This work
but I urge my colleagues on stage here to stand up to the federal government and say, pay your full share. You should pay it. Nova Scotians are worth it. They should do it.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. Folks, this work could have started 3 years ago. But instead, we've got a premier that every single chance he gets would rather play politics than get work done for you. There's $325 million sitting on the table from the federal government for this project. There's money there. New Brunswick and Nova Scotia can pay 25% on that project. This is too important for our province, for our food insecurity, for our economy, for people's lives to play these sorts of games because it's more politically advantageous to the premier to attack Liberals than actually just get this job done. Mr. Houston talks about Quebec. Guess what? The infrastructure investments in Quebec are also shared by the provinces. So this is how these projects are funded, whether it's highways, whether it's our interprovincial ferries, or whether it's bridges. They are usually jointly funded, and he's playing politics instead of getting this work done.
I have 2 sisters at home and 3 kids, and I'll tell you something. I know when to pick a fight, and it's not all the time. And that's what we see from this premier over here. Tim wants to pick a fight with Ottawa all the time because he thinks it's a winning election strategy. And he's picking a fight instead of giving our province the safety, security, and knowledge it needs that we're not going to become an island. Tim says the work is already happening, but we hear differently on the ground. Tim says that we're not supporting the fight with Ottawa. That's not true. We have been asked on the record in a resolution whether or not we support pursuing Ottawa for 100% funding. I certainly do. But that shouldn't stop the work. We need to get it done. If we need to pursue the money afterwards, by all means. But grandstanding and fighting instead of doing the work that Nova Scotians need, particularly in the area around the border, to know that their homes and stores and lives won't be upended by a major storm is absolutely imperative.
Mr. Houston, a very quick rebuttal here.
Thank you. And listen, I will never apologize for standing up for you. Nova Scotia has a right to expect that they are treated fairly by the federal government. And this is not small change. This is over $400 to $500 million. That's a lot of money. It's Nova Scotians have a right to get the same treatment as the other parts of the country. I'm really pleased to hear the NDP say that they will now join us in calling on Ottawa to pay the full share. But I also want to assure Nova Scotians there is no waiting. The work is happening. The engineering started on day one when I came in. It's a massive, massive project. It's a multi-year project. The work is being started. I can't let it stand for 1 second that anyone would say we're not actually starting and we put Nova Scotia at risk.
Thank
I
you
would
for
never
that.
do that.
We're going to move on here. You've all made promises here tonight. You and your parties have all broken promises over the years as well. When is it okay to break a promise, Mr. Houston?
Listen, in the election campaign, we made a lot of promises around doctor's pension plan. We've done that. We promised the MOST program. We've done that. We promised that we would address the internet issue for Nova Scotians. We've done that. We continue to invest in that. We promised that we wouldn't separate seniors going into long-term care. We've done that. We promised more doctors, more access. We've done that. So everything that I tell you, I believe in my heart we can do. There are times in life when events overtake you or new information comes. I believe I've shown Nova Scotians that when new information comes available or when I can see that I'm wrong, I have the courage to change path. We also promised a non-resident tax. Many people will remember that. But Nova Scotians told me, we don't like it. You're wrong on that, Premier. And I said, okay. There are times when you have more information or when just events of life overtake you that you have to put Nova Scotians before what it is you thought you could do. And I will always put Nova Scotians first. I promise you that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Houston. Mr. Churchill.
Mr. Houston's first promise, fixed election date. First law, a fixed election date. There's no reason to call this election. There's no reason to break the law, except that Mr. Houston thinks that he can get more power and less accountability right now. This election is not about you. It's about him. We have a platform here. This is not just a pamphlet of empty promises like you've seen from Mr. Houston. This is our contract to you, where we are going to build 80,000 homes, where we're going to protect renters, where we are going to get back to the fundamentals in healthcare system like investing in family practice, where we are going to give you $3,000 back in your pocket in lower and fairer taxes. I don't think it's right for politicians to break their word. And in fact, if I do not follow through on this contract to you, if I don't follow through on my promises, I won't run again. You won't have to worry about voting for me, because that's how important I think someone's word needs to be. And even through the hard times, when the public pressure shifts and the headlines get bad, you can't govern like a wet noodle in the wind. Sometimes you've got to keep your hand on the tiller, keep making the tough decisions as long as you think they're right. And that's certainly not what we've seen over the last couple of years. But I think Nova Scotians deserve a government.
Ms. Chender, when is it okay to break a political promise?
Thanks for the question. Events of life. Tim just said that it's okay to break a promise when events of life intervene. I don't think events of life intervened in a better paycheck for Nova Scotians or in a loyalty program where people could actually buy local products, not $1 million to Sobeys, or in reinstating school boards or proclaiming the Coastal Protection Act or actually giving people the health care they need. Our commitment is to you. It's to everyday Nova Scotians to address the challenges that you need, starting with the people who need it the most. We will address housing. We'll make sure that we finally can implement real rent control so you are not afraid of losing your home. We'll close the fixed-term lease loophole so that the seniors across this province aren't worried about being evicted. We will address primary care by making sure that you can be attached to a doctor clinic no matter where you live. And we will finally address the cost of living and do something about the tax on the essentials that you need every day. Those are our promises. They're simple, they're clear, they address the needs of Nova Scotians, and we stand by them.
Okay, Mr. Houston, you wanted to jump in there?
Thank you, and Nova Scotians will remember a famous promise that the Liberals made in 2013, a doctor for every Nova Scotian. They had no plan for that. This is the difference. When people just say things without a plan, then you can understand how they don't do it. We did talk about a better paycheck, and I would say we have negotiated 289 union agreements, 289, and I think each one of those got a better paycheck. The CCAs, we bumped up their pay rate, early in the mandate because we could see that it wasn't fair. They got a better paycheck. People with the most are getting. So look, we are sincere in what we say is possible, and we put out a platform. It's costed, it's affordable, it's what we can do, and we'll continue to move forward. This is the time for an election in this province, and I can understand that the NDP might not want to give Nova Scotians their say right now, and the Liberals might not want to give Nova Scotians their say right now, but it is exactly what we were talking about around promises. That is the reason. My agreement with Nova Scotians was around healthcare. We're making incredible progress on healthcare, but the world has changed with the affordability, so now we're talking about massive infrastructure investments. Now we're talking about tax cuts, and I believe Nova Scotians have a right to have their say on what our plan for the future is, and I'm happy to give them their say.
We are almost out of time. We want to have our final words from each of the leaders for their closing statements. And Mr. Churchill, by the draw, you are first up.
Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in tonight, folks. You've got a very important decision to make. The last platform that Mr. Houston ran on, you can't even find on the internet. And he's running on the same broken promises that he ran last time. Things he could have done in the next 8 months as Premier. The fact is that he didn't call this election for you. He called it for himself. But the good news is that you can make a choice to improve the direction that we're on. We're offering you a vision for this province, one that will give you $3,000 back in your pocket in tax reforms and tax cuts. We will no longer be the highest tax province in the country. We won't be the second highest tax province in the country if you go with Mr. Houston's plan. We'll be the lowest in Atlantic Canada. We'll build more homes for people that need it, so young people know that they can have hope in building a future here, for seniors who need to downsize. And we'll tackle the big costs like groceries and power bills and invest in free public transit, because we know by doing these things, we are going to make life more affordable for you. We're going to create a much stronger province where we can accommodate sustainable levels of growth, where we aren't bursting at the seams. And we do have to get back to the fundamentals of healthcare. We did have a goal of getting every doctor, every Nova Scotian a family doctor. That still needs to be the goal. We can't give up on it just because it's hard. Building health clinics from one end of the province to the other, we know will help bring more doctors back to family medicine and attach more patients to doctors. That's going to be important, not just for our healthcare system, but for your health and health outcomes and longevity moving forward. Please support us.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Churchill. Your closing statements, Mr. Houston.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ms. Chender and Mr. Churchill. I enjoyed the discussion. A bit pointed at times, but that's okay. It's an absolute privilege to be the Premier of this province. This province is built on hard work, and every single day I work harder and harder for you. I'm proud of my record. I'm proud of how fast we have moved on the issues in the time we've been in office, and I'm proud of the path that this province is on. Your family is better off under a PC government. We are the only party with a plan to lower your taxes and leave more money in your pocket. We are the only party that has a plan for more and more doctors and more access to healthcare. And we are the only party with a plan to give you higher wages. Good things are happening in this province. Incredible things are happening in this province. We just need to keep going. So I'm looking forward to getting back out on the doorsteps and listening to you and having intimate discussions with you and frank discussions with you. I'm looking forward to that. And when I come to see you, I'll be asking for your continued support. I'll be asking you to vote for your local PC candidate so we can continue to move this province forward. We are rolling in this province, and we are the only party that can make it happen. So please vote for your PC candidate. Thank you for tuning in tonight. It's been a great evening.
Ms. Chender, your closing statement.
Thanks. Thanks, Tom and Amy, and thank you for taking the time tonight to hear from me and from all of us. But this election isn't about the three of us. It's about you. Your life, your health care, your cost of living. On Election Day, you have the chance to choose the kind of future that you want and the kind of province that you want. There are some who want you to believe that there's nothing to be done about rising prices, or that expensive condos will magically become affordable homes, or that access to a single appointment is the health care we need. It's not true. It's a matter of priorities. The truth is that these two have been in government, and housing prices have steadily gone up, rent has gone out of control, Renters have not been protected, and the doctor wait list has gone from 0 to 70,000, now to 145,000 people. What we haven't seen are solutions for everyday Nova Scotians. That is what New Democrats have been fighting for every day, and that is what we will deliver. The healthcare you deserve, a home you can afford, and more breathing room in your family's budget. Together, with your vote, we can build a province where every Nova Scotian can thrive.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chender. And that is it for our 2024 Leaders Debate. We want to thank all three party leaders for taking part tonight, and we'll continue to bring you up-to-date coverage from the campaign trail over the coming weeks. We hope you'll join us for our Election Night special on November 26th on CBC Television, the CBC Gem app, and the CBC Nova Scotia YouTube page.
We'll also be broadcasting on CBC Radio 1, and we'll have up-to-date results and analysis on our website at cbc.ca/ns. If you are listening tonight on CBC Radio, you'll be joining your regularly scheduled program In Progress. Thanks so much for joining us, and good night.
Good night.